Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. As I said, my name's Claire Evans. I'm the Senior Probation Officer here at Yeovil Probation. And thanks very much, Vicky. We have a lot of people that are involved with Lucy Foundation before they actually come to us. So I'm just going to take control of the thing. Oh, sorry. Okay. So we're protecting children from those who may pose a risk, safeguarding through assessment, intervention, and partnership. As I said, sorry, I'm not very technical savvy, so you just have to bear with me. Okay, so the Somerset Probation, we supervise 189 registered sex offenders, and that could be contact sex offenders or internet sex offenders, and that's in the community. We do have people that aren't registered sex offenders, and that's because the sex offender register didn't come into place until 1997. So we have people that have committed historic sexual offences 30, 40 years ago, which the offences were sexual, but they're not on the register. And also we do have some other people that have had a good solicitor that are also not on the register. And now the sex offender register requires that the offenders have to notify the police of all foreign travel. If someone is NFA or homeless, they have to report to a police station once a week. That's so obviously the police know where they are at all time. And if they're living in a household where there's a child under the age of 18, under these changes, they need to tell the police so the police can make relevant the assessments, and they have to notify about bank account and credit cards, and they also have to notify about any passports that they have as well. So we supervise people on license and community orders as well. We have a statutory duty, under MAPPA and the safeguarding frameworks. Statutory framework, it brings the police, probation and the prison service, adult social services, child social services, mental health team, all together under statutory framework where we can share information and formulate risk management plans for sexual offenders. And we focus on risk assessment, risk management and multi-agency collaboration. And obviously why this matters, because we prevent harm and we protect vulnerable children or children that aren't vulnerable. Okie doke. So we assess risk of serious harm. How do we do that? Well, probation, we use OASIS, which is an offender assessment system, where we do RSR scores, OSP scores, which is offender sexual prediction scores, and we use ARMS as well. And then the ARMS is we identify eligible cases, so it's people that are under statutory supervision for probation and are managed under MAPPA. I should have said this to start with, sorry. All sexual offenders are registered under category 1 of MAPPA, all of them. So they're all MAPPA cases, regardless of whether they're low, medium, high, very high risk of harm. We then gather information, static factors, the unchangeable factors. I can't change my age. They can't change their offence. Static factors that no one can ever change. They can't change the fact they've got 20 previous offences. And then we look at dynamic risk factors, which are the changeable ones, their attitudes, their lifestyle. Are they in a relationship now? Do they have children? And then we look at protective factors that reduce risk, which I will go into a little bit further on in my talk. Supportive relationships. And then we put all of that together and come up with a risk, whether that would be low, medium, high. We then identify, so I've got bits of paper over here, we identify triggers. So we've got behavioural triggers, which can be substance misuse, alcohol, drugs, which leads to impaired judgment. We look at emotional dysregulation, such as anger outbursts or inability to cope with stress and to cope with life. Sexualised behaviour and inappropriate interest in children. Isolation or withdrawal from support networks, which is particularly important for internet sexual offenders because their world becomes quite small and then the behaviour becomes very normalised. And I've heard so many people saying, but Claire, loads of people were doing it. I got loads of mates online that are doing it. It can't be that bad. We then look at the situational patterns. So that can be access to children through family, work or social settings. And we look then our unsupervised contact, caregiving roles without oversight. We then look at relationship breakdowns, which is a significant life stressor for a lot of people. I lost my family. I started to drink too much, and then I started to go online, and etc. And then we look at have they got any previous non-compliance with probation and license conditions or safeguarding plans that have been put in place. We then look at environmental factors, which can be chaotic home environment, lack of structure, neglect, presence of other high-risk individuals in the household. Sadly, I've met some father and son, mother and daughters who are sexually offended together. Again, it becomes very normalized. So community factors such as proximity to schools or to playgrounds. This list isn't exhaustive, but I've only got 10 minutes. So cognitive and the cognitive factors, sorry, minimization or denial of previous behavior or the current behavior. It wasn't me, Claire. I didn't do it. I wasn't there. They've made it up. Yeah, I didn't do it. My next door neighbor hacked into my hard drive and went into my computer. I think I've heard them all. Or the minimization, it wasn't that bad. She seemed to enjoy it, or he seemed to enjoy it, etc. The rationalization, justifying, and just downright lack of empathy towards the children or victims. And then we look at escalation patterns as well, which is increased secretive behaviour. I've had some people say that they couldn't wait for their business partner to go home at 6 o'clock because for an hour, that was his online time. And that was when he relaxed at the end of the day before he went back to what he called his normal life and his wife and family. So any of secretive avoidance of monitoring, breaching boundaries, grooming behavior, testing limits. Some people don't realize that it is grooming. They don't understand that's what their behavior is. So we look at all of that and put together a risk management plan. Now, people that have been in prison, we can put them on, when they come out of prison, they're on license. And we would have met with them before they come out of prison. We would have met with their prison offender manager, and we would formulate together a risk management plan of how we're going to manage their risk in the community. Now, if anybody wants one, I have got an anonymised license for a sex offender with all the conditions that we can put on. But I will off the top of my head, the basic conditions is that they're not allowed to reside even for one night with anyone under the age of 18. They have to tell us if they're in a relationship. They're not allowed near any schools. They have to have polygraph testing if they're high risk of harm. And that is where we would ask a polygraph examiner specific questions. How often have they thought about children in a sexual way that week? Have they gone anywhere near the victims? We will put exclusion zones in to protect the victims, non-contact to protect the victims. Depending on their risk, they might, or the length of sentence, they might have to go into an approved premises when they're released, where we can really monitor their behaviour till they settle back into the community. They will have an accommodation where they can't reside unless we've approved the address. So it's not too close to a school. There aren't any children going by. Etc. etc. We then enforce the license conditions and we monitor compliance. And we do this really strongly with the police, because the moment that an offender signs on the sex offender register, they are allocated a MOSIVO officer. And that stands for Management of Violent and Sexual Offenders. And that MOSIVO officer will link in with us and we will work with them. And the MOSIVO officers can do home visits to sexual offenders. They can check their phones because some of them will have license conditions that they can't delete any of their internet history. Some of them will have SHOPO, sex offender prevention orders, where they're not allowed to have more than one laptop. They're not allowed to delete their internet history, any internet related things. So the MOSIVO officers can go in and they can use their IT to check if someone has deleted their history, what websites have they been on, have they downloaded an app which can delete your history, so on and so forth. We do home visits as well. We can check around. I can remember one case we did a home visit and he had Disney DVDs all over the floor, which sort of gave us an indication. Why have you got Disney? You don't have children. So we do home visits, check how they are in the home environment. Is there any signs that they are in a relationship? Have there been children in the address? We also refer to children's services when concerns arise. So I've made a note to myself about disclosure. So if someone came in to us and said, look, Claire, I'm in a relationship now and I want to move in, and she knows all about my offending, the first thing we would do is we would clarify that disclosure with them, because sometimes their version of what happened and our version of what happened aren't close to the truth. So we would make a decision with the police about disclosure, because if that lady's got children, we would then disclose his offences to her. And it's not as simple as going, right, we've told her and then now we can get on with our day. We have to make sure that those children are protected. So we will refer to children's services, who will then make an assessment about whether that lady or man is protective enough to protect her children. And if someone was on license, it would be very doubtful that we would say he could move in, even if she was deemed to be protective, if I'm honest, off the record there. But that's what we do in terms of disclosure, to make sure that the children are protected. Okay, so the risk assessment tools that we use, you can see that I'm not very good at this technical. It's okay. As I said, we use ARMS, we use Oasis, and we also use Mapper. And Mapper is so crucial for information sharing, because historically, when issues have happened, it's when one agency has stopped talking to each other. So social services might have that one little bit of the puzzle that we didn't know about, or we have a bit of puzzle that they didn't know about, and then we can risk assess and really formulate a good risk management plan. So the interventions that we have, as we've heard from Lucy Faithful, we've got an accredited program which is called Building Choices. We can do psychological support and therapy referrals. We do, structured supervision and monitoring. We've got behavioural contracts and internet restrictions. We've got sex offender registration, sexual harm prevention order. The list goes on and on. We can refer to neurodiversity services for whatever support that the offender needs so they don't create another victim. And I move on. So partnership working, I'll just quickly touch on this. As I said, it's really crucial that we're all talking to each other. So we do children's services safeguarding referrals, police intelligence sharing and enforcement. We do joint home visits with the MOSVO officers, because they're police officers, they have more power than probation. If the offender said, bugger off, Claire, you're not coming in, the police have got more power to say, you need to let us in, please. If they did say to us, you're not coming in, Claire, we would record that as a breach and as a failure. There would be consequences to that, but obviously we don't have the right to say, you will let us in this door. We also do health services, mental health and trauma support. Some of our, not all, but some of our offenders have been through great trauma in their own childhoods. So to deal with that. And then we've got community organisations, social reintegration. A lot of our offenders, sexual offenders, are quite socially isolated. It's, I think, Vicky touched on it really, that it's such an emotive subject and one that such huge stigma that some of them, they don't have a network outside of the family home, because some of them are terrified about being found out about their offences and what other people think will say. So the protective factors, employment. If people are employed and they are living in a pro-social world, they do tend to have a more settled life. Boredom is a massive key. For some people to offending. Stable accommodation, us knowing where they're living, the police know where they're living, it's all been approved and checked, is a massive thing. Positive family support. We have a lot of people that are very isolated, but the family know everything about it and are still willing to support them in the community. Disclosure is a real key one, and I could take up hours talking about disclosure and the pros and cons and when we do and when we don't. But clearly we can't have someone living in someone's home and they don't know the nature of their offending. Engagement in pro-social activities, access to psychological services, license conditions, as well as a SHOPO. Now, the challenges that we have, because it is a very emotive and there's a lot of shame with sexual offending. I've met many people that will admit they've killed someone, but they won't admit the sexual element of it. They just can't bear that. I should move forward, sorry. They just can't bear the shame. And there's loads of reasons why people deny, or they don't want to lose their family, they're ashamed of what they've done. The denial and minimisation of risk is a huge one for probation to have to deal with, but people deny things because they're ashamed of it, so we take it from that working point. False compliance. We do have a lot of sexual offenders who do attend every week, and on the surface we think, oh, this is going really well, but actually that compliance is false. And they've either got a laptop at home that we don't know about and the police don't know about, or they're not being honest about their sexual thoughts. To do with the fact they don't want to go back to prison. Though I have had one or two, not on the subject of false compliance, who have come in and they desperately don't want to create another victim and said, Claire, can you recall me to prison because I'm getting urges and I'm really worried about what I'm going to do. We've got hidden online behaviours. Where people have gone, haven't, as I've said about the laptop that we need to look at is in the loft and it's turned off. And there are now apps, I don't know how to use them, but you can delete your internet history apparently without the police seeing it. So, and also we have to balance rehabilitation and enforcement. And that can be quite difficult. I think I use this term almost on a daily basis with some of them. It's the fact that, you know, side by side, we've got rehabilitation and we've got public protection, and public protection does have to come first. So if someone were to come in here and say, I'm getting urges, and I'm saying this because I trust you, we have to look at whether we are protecting the public and whether we do have to enforce and take them back to, you know, send them back to prison. And again, resource limitations is a massive thing as well. I think I can't really talk for the police, but they've got a huge backlog with their internet checking and things like that, and there just isn't enough of them. There's not enough of us. Sometimes I've had people go, well, didn't you know he had a new girlfriend? Well, we don't have the resources to sit outside their house 24/7 and follow people around, so the limitations are quite there. So I'm aware that I've talked too fast, sorry. Probation does play a critical role in safeguarding children through assessment, intervention, collaboration. The risk can be managed, but we have to be ongoingly vigilant and adaptable. Absolutely, because one size doesn't fit all. You don't meet a stereotypical sexual offender. They're all very different. Okay, that is a real whistle stop tour. And if there's any questions, just don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.